Good evening, everyone, and welcome inside Upon Further Review, the audio and video podcast covering the Summit Athletic Conference and football all across Fort Wayne and Northeast Indiana each and every week right here on Wednesday nights. I'm Eric Dudkevich, better known as Dude, alongside the coach Shannon Griffith. And Coach, welcome in. Week one in the books now. We are into the regular season, and quite a night Friday night. We were out at Homestead for the Carmel Homestead game, but a big night Friday night across the area. A lot of games because of the new conference set up for the SAC. And you were there with Brett Rump on the call of the Homestead Carmel game. Just your initial thoughts from a week one in the books now.
Well, I thought we saw a pretty good game with Homestead and Carmel, and really came down to one play. But if you looked at it, and we can maybe talk a little bit at length at it a little bit later, Homestead had multitude of chances to really take control of that game and really just kind of shot themselves in the foot. And when you're playing a good team like Carmel, you just can't afford to make mistakes that Homestead made. And with a young team, you're going to make those type of mistakes on a Friday night until you get yourself some really good playing experience. I mean, we're seeing the catch there by Fox that ultimately led to first and goal. And about 3 plays later, they snapped it over the quarterback's head. It took them out of a chance of scoring, and then they missed a field goal. So that would have been a huge turning point in the game. So outside of that, I think around the area, Snyder did quite a nice job down against Warren Central. Carroll had their hands full with Hamilton Southeastern, really couldn't get a ground game going on Friday night, and ultimately lost that one 28-14. We're going to have Warren Central and Carroll this Friday night. Everything starting out there at 6:30 with the pregame show, of course. But I said 6:30, didn't I?
Yeah. Well, the reason it's kind of murky that way is because the later kickoffs with coming up from Indy. We traditionally do the 7:00 kicks in the Summit Athletic Conference with a 6:00 pregame show on 1380 this week, and this past week at Homestead, this coming week at Carroll, where we'll be for the game of the week this week with Warren Central. With those 7:30 kickoffs, it's an extended pregame show. So we will be there at 6:30, but we also will be there at 6 as well. But so really cool. So week one is in the books, and we'll kind of break down some of the games later. Coming up on today's show just a little bit, we'll be joined by Andre Goodwell, the new head coach of the Southside Archers. Year one for him, trying to bring that program back. And I know they came up a little bit short on Friday night, 22-17 at Marion, but Coach just, really good out of the blocks for the Southside, for everything that they've been through the last couple of years and trying to find something. I think a good week one showing for the Archers that we'll be able to talk to Coach Goodwell with.
Yeah. And, I have a lot of respect for Coach, and just from what I've observed from him over, the last couple of weeks we had the media day out there that you guys had hosted, and was impressed with him and his stature and how he kind of handled himself with that at there. And I really felt for the first time, they kind of got the right guy. You know what I'm saying? And I know he's got his hands in. I don't know what that was, but anyway, they like the way I said, Andre. I think they got the right coach for that situation. I think he'll do good things there, involving the community, bringing the kids up through the community out there at Southside, and really work to get the feeder schools involved. And we're going to bring him on here in probably a couple minutes, but I'm impressed. I think that he's ready to do some good things there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for a big hire over the summer, I know he's got a lot of young guys coming in, and he'll talk a little bit more about that. And of course, we'll break down all of the upcoming games for week 2 in the SAC. Of course, we're a non-conference action again this week for the SAC, and really the other conferences for the most part as well, with the NE8 and the ACAC and some of the other in the NECC starting to blend in some conference games. So we'll break that down later in the week. But Coach, what do you think? We go ahead and bring in Coach Goodwell now from the Southside Archers and welcome you in.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, joining us now from the Southside Archers, head coach Andre Goodwell. Andre, first of all, thanks for joining us on Upon Further Review, our first coach for year number 2, and for you, it's year 1. I mean, just talk about taking over this program off the bat and really what you've seen so far as through the summer and really into week 1 and now into week 2 of the regular season.
Okay, thank you for having me. First off, just a lot of hard work and dedication to the program and to a totally new system, offensively and defensively. Now, and like we said, a lot of teams, as a lot of coaches and teams will know, a little bit further along than the offense right now, but everyone's working hard and they've totally bought into me being the third coach. Well, me being the third coach in 4 years and huge, and for them to be able to buy into our system and the message that I'm trying to preach to our team to be consistent down week in and week out. I couldn't have asked for a better group of guys, actually. Like young men that we have, they've been working hard for us, and I think that showed. It also showed that we still have a lot to learn, and we had a fast start going into the game, and we were in territories in a good way with having a early 14-point lead going into half. Times that can kind of get away from a bunch who's not used to being there and not used to handle that. And when that switch flips and you become the hunted and you're no longer, you have to be able to handle that adversity. And hats off to Marion. They did a great job of hanging around and executing off some mistakes we made in the second half to get their offense on the board. And then it was back and forth from there. And, at the end of the day, we to win the game with 2 minutes to go. We're inside the 5-yard line, and we just weren't able to get it done. And like I said, those are learning tools going, because again, what I've been preaching all summer is to be able to compete, with 0 personal fouls, to finish the game with under 100 yards worth of, to have a defense that flies around. Our defense was 5 turnovers in the game. We had 3 fumbles forced, an interception, and a block punt. They put us in position to have a chance to win in the end, and that's all we can ask. And the kids are now see that we can compete week in and week out if we play the game the right way and try to play mistake-free.
Sure. Coach, you came in. A lot is made of what has happened in the last 3 years at Southside. From the positive standpoint, what was the first thing you kind of learned about your team when you took over that you thought, you know what, I've got something I can work with here, and it's going to be a fun, couple of months in the off season and leading in? What is it about your team that really you found when you walked in day one about this Southside team, the underlying theme for this team that maybe a lot of people on the outside don't see?
I would say the passion and the learn, because that was the thing that got me the first day. They listened to me. They learned our team creed the first me, and they all bought into the rules. The we first for me, and how us playing together and working together all summer, how they said to see that pay off in the little things, starting with 7-on-7 stuff, and then in the season now with our first game, with facing a lot of adversity in the game, those first games when the cramps and the conditioning set in and those type of things, fight through those type of adverse situations on the field, and we'll get used to that to play. And now that we're home, fully home, and we can start to practice routine back together. I think those things are going to help us out too, and hopefully we'll.
Yeah, Coach. Looking back at Friday night, and for you, who were some of your strong performers that came out of the gate and really, like you said, established that 14-point lead? I know defensively you felt really good when you're getting the turnovers and such, but who were some of the strong performers for you for week one?
I'd have to start with one of our younger players, our quarterback, Kendrick. He handled himself very well, very maturely. I think he was 10 for 15, had over 150 yards passing and a touchdown. They're working on a little bit of pocket presence and ball handling, ball security in the pocket, some things that he's only with repetition, but he handled himself well controlling the offense. But Brian Eldridge for us, and also Dominic Malone, we were able to put him at a few different places and see do with him, and he was able to get in the end zone and score our lone offensive touchdown. And as far as our defense, it's hard to just point out one person because, like I said, especially in the first game started, we just had relentless pressure coming from all over, and our secondary was covering up. We were making some hits and creating turnovers. We actually had 2 forced turnovers that were returned for touchdowns. One of them were called back that first half. One was called back due to an illegal block. But the whole, I would say they performed. They did exactly, and they stuck to exactly what our defensive game plan was, and it was exactly what I wanted our defense to look like, for hitting, causing turnovers, and like I said, it gave us an opportunity to win, kept us in the game.
Now let's talk about some things that I guess you're looking at from a futuristic standpoint. I know that coming from Lures, a program that, you've had a lot of success there through the years, now to Southside, but explain how getting your new field turf has really also helped in that enthusiasm and the kids now having a nice facility A to Z to be a part of that program.
I just wish you guys could have had to be with us Saturday morning at our practice, so you could have seen the excitement on their faces. And after our conditioning session and film, the first thing was, Coach, can we take the field? And I allowed them to go on the field. They ran up and down the field, smiles on their faces. They're doing cartwheels and flips up and down the field, and have the opportunity to be back home and them to feel like now, we have a surface. We have a great stadium that people are going to want to see. They're going to take pride in playing there. I mean, seeing them so happy to see that stadium there, and it just brightens up the field. The track, everything looks great, and just being there every day, seeing the process from beginning to end, it's been amazing. And they did a great job. Hats off to all the workers there. It looks amazing.
Well, explain, I think for our viewers, they may or may not understand, for a practice field and such, you really didn't have that, aspect of it now that with this field being turf, because that helps you in a practice setting more so than anything. But they were practicing at different places across the street. They really just didn't have their own, 100-yard practice area for the last 3 or 4 years. It was just what they had on their actual campus.
Yes, correct. That was like I said, again, an adverse situation to having to travel. We've traveled to 3 different sites. We were at school. We've practiced at Memorial Park Middle School, and we spent most of the summer at the Annex. But I tried to use that as bonding situations, taking those bus trips. Everybody ride the bus, nobody drives. It was something that we looked at as another. We're looking at all the hurdles in front of us, and how do we break them down? Just jump over them. We want to break them, and like I said, no one else is doing. So we take that as a positive, not as a negative, but that's something else that we to travel, to adjust our schedule, and do that every day. There to commit themselves to being there on time when the bus was leaving, before waits prior to us leaving. Like I said, I had little to know that, and it shows. Again, there's a lot of things that we have to work on, but kids are learning, and like I said, we're learning fast.
Sure.
Go ahead, dude. I didn't know if you had another.
Coach Goodwell, talk a little bit about you. How did you kind of come up through the ranks in high school football? I know you were big in the Metro throughout the years, and a Lures running back coach. I know your brother is the coach, the girls basketball coach at Cherubusco, Dave Goodwell. Your sister-in-law is Juanita, the girls basketball coach at Southside. Just talk about your dynamic, your family dynamic coming up, and how this opportunity to be the new Southside coach is kind of played into kind of your coaching career, your athletic career, and really how it's kind of risen to this occasion.
Family dynamic has my brother and my sister-in-law have always been big supporters of me, and like I said, through the ranks, starting even on the Metro level, and coming through the middle school, even coaching in the CYO, and that was where some of my connections, even with Lure, coaching with Jim Carroll over in the CYO with St. John's Fort Wayne for a few years. The program over once he retired, and had some success there with some of the athletes there. Bishop Lure. So, but with my family being at Southside, it was just kind of a weird thing that I landed there. But I'd always been supporting the basketball program. Like I said, numerous amount of family members play there. I had at Southside myself. I mean, I was a Harding graduate, so that was a hard swallow for me. But we got through that. But no, I've had my nephews, members, and especially after Harding closed down, I had all my family was at Southside. We were all Southside, so been bleeding green, underneath for a long time. Still some Harding green in there too, but I've been rooting for Southside for a long time. So the family dynamic was there, and what that did put my eyes to how they treated them there. And speaking with David and having conversations with Juanita, just even about the athletic department and what the support looked like, being there, and and how they looked out for the players, and what they were able to do for the players, how they got them to school, getting them graduated, being able to take a personal role in their life like that. And it was always supportive. And the fact that I had the opportunity to come in and work is amazing, because we had a relationship together before. We the opportunity to coach on the same staff at Wayne High School for a year. So we already prior had a relationship. He kind of knew what I was about a little bit, and what I wanted with the football team if I ever had a chance to lead. So I just think there it made it a lot easier for me to want to become a part of Southside. And regardless of the record and the past, I just felt that my style is different. What I bring to a team is different. Foundational tactics are different, and that's what I've had the most success with doing is getting kids to buy in and getting kids to want to play for me, and let I care about them on and off the field, and willing to do whatever they need me to do for them is one of the biggest reasons I chose Southside, because I know they needed that. I know, a shot of fresh air, and I believe I'm providing that, wanting to know the kids there, and they're still getting to know my style, but we're learning fast. And like I said, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised at how fast we can compete, and how they're learning to forget some of, I would say, stereotypes of Southside football, because it's just not okay that, and a lot of kids, we've talked about it and we've communicated, they don't like to hear that, well, it's just okay that we were close, or the outside teams in the past have had maybe a running clock in the first game, and you guys, they're not accepting of that. That was a game that we feel as a staff and as a team that was there for that game, and from the top to the bottom, starting with myself, we have to find a way together to find a way to get those games and start winning those close games and turning those close victories. But right now, I think we're in the mode that we feel like we're going to be a competitive football team, and I think we're going to get better sooner than later. We're going to continue later.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, we certainly are looking forward to seeing what the big things that come out of Southside. I know it's been a positive summer, positive off season, positive week one in some respects. I know you guys did fall to Marion late, but had those opportunities that I think for you guys can build from a program. And we certainly appreciate you coming on Upon Further Review podcast tonight. And best of luck the rest of the season, and best wishes to the Southside Archers all year long.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. Look forward to talking to you again.
All right, Andre. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, that was Andre Goodwell, the new head coach of the Southside Archers. And, Shannon, I mean, he talked about it. There is a perception for Southside, particularly the last, 5 or 6 years, maybe a decade, even really longer than that to a certain extent, that from the football side of things, that program has been pretty down for a number of years, given the athletic nature of the overall school. So I think for them, this has been a great hire in the offseason, a lot of positive. They won the Thrive Division Championship at the PSM 7-on-7 we had earlier this summer. You saw some of the video for those of you watching the podcast. And so I think for them, it's when you're down for so long, those little positive steps become so more important for a program like Southside.
Yeah. And I think that once, Andre has a chance to, get a full year in underneath his belt, it's going to seem a lot smoother for him from week to week and game to game. When you're trying to rebuild a program, it's just not going to happen overnight. I mean, it's the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time, kind of the concept. And that's going to be the same thing with Southside. It's going to be one day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 year at a time. And, this year it's a foundation laying process for him. And then, of course, continuing to get kids out, because we know that Southside has talent. They always have had talent. They've had some good football teams through the year. When I was at Ball State, I recruited Jason Barnes and Andre Reese right out of Southside High School that went down to Ball State and played for us, especially Adrian Reese, who had a tremendous career. So they're not they've got the talent there, and it's just a matter of putting it together.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of talent at Southside, a new era again for them. They turned the page, go with head coach Andre Goodwell, and off to an 0-1 start this season. But, Coach, it really came down. Young playmakers, too. KJ Alexander, he mentioned, as their quarterback, a kid who was a freshman and went out there. I saw him first time at the 7-on-7 we had available for PSM, and I was like, who is this? And I've never, KJ Alexander, and some of them were calling him Kendrick, and he's KJ, and he's in 8th grade, and he came from Miami. And I'm like, wait a minute, he hasn't even started high school yet. So I think you're going to see a lot of those growing pains too, just because you have a younger group of talent. But that's where teams get built, and I think that's an important aspect of it. Just not only for Southside, but so many different teams in the SEC, Wayne and Northside, and even Snyder in that regard too is traditional of a powerhouse they are. The ability to go into the middle schools and recruit those players so that when they are 8th graders at at Portage and Memorial Park and some of those other feeder schools, that the reputation is a little bit better for those middle schoolers going into high school, saying, all right, we'll go out and play for the football team, because their basketball team is usually pretty good. Their track team does really well. And I know Andre was a track coach at Lures as well. So I think that will help cross over a little bit too. So I think it'll be good for them. And I know, just talking with Tori Curry earlier in the year too, just the positive nature of just, and it's not just the football on Friday night, it's well-rounded young men in the school. And I think that will bear itself out as well as we go along for Southside football. So,
well, the other thing is getting kids and getting them to Southside and not letting them go to a Bishop Lewis or a Bishop Dwenger, because we have these kind of open borders in the Fort Wayne Community School type of scenarios. So that's the battle too. And I think that's why he's been, I think, a really good hire for them. Relatable, down to earth. I think kids will love to play for him. I think, his presence in the building and things of that nature will be a huge positive for Southside overall. They got a big one this week. They got South Bend St. Joe, a tough, parochial school up in South Bend that's been, very tradition laden over the years. So we'll see how they fare. Like I said, it's a week in, week out process for him right now. And it will be week to week with a freshman quarterback. He doesn't have to worry too much about the hair, but that's where you get the gray hairs from. But I think overall decent showing. Learn to put it away in the second half, like he was talking about. When you get 5 turnovers, you should win a game.
Yeah,
in all likelihood, especially with a block punt. So, but we'll, I think we'll be talking about their progression throughout the year.
Yeah, of course. Southside, one of many games, one of 10 games involving SAC teams over Friday night in week 1. The first week of non-conference action, we pull up kind of the look of the conference in the conference slate from Friday night, Coach. 10 games involving SAC schools, most of them against Indianapolis schools. Ultimately, the conference goes 2-8 in those games. But I think it's twofold for me looking at this. Yes, 2 wins out of the 8. You get Snyder with their huge win at Warren Central. You get Wayne at home beating Crispus Attucks, also out of Indianapolis. Tough sledding for some of the other teams, but really the design of this new conference setup with the 2 divisions, the 2 non-conference games off the top, the crossover games in the middle of the year. Ultimately, I think this is there is a certain element of why they're doing this, because, oh my goodness, at the end of the day, Dwenger versus Brownsburg wasn't even close. And we know that Dwenger has a lot of room to grow to get to a place like a school like Brownsburg. On the flip side of that, some Carroll and Hamilton Southeastern meet up for the second time in 2 years, and it's a great game, as was the game we were at with Homestead and Carmel, being a 14-7 final. But an interesting dynamic in week 1, looking at the schedule and how it all turned out for the SAC schools.
Well, you look at the Bishop Dwenger, they got handled pretty good with Brownsburg now. But I told you in our pregame show, Brownsburg has been a tough team for the last 4 or 5 years. And they've got a couple Division I talented kids. They got a quarterback that can throw it around and 2 wideouts, I believe, that can really, really go get it. So that score against Bishop Dwenger to me was not overly surprising. Carroll turned the ball over twice, and you can't do that against a talented Hamilton Southeastern team. And they're going to have to run the ball better because they only got 60 yards on the ground. And, from that standpoint, that's, again, finding balance with what they need to do. And I understand sometimes maybe you're outmatched up front, and it forces you to put the ball in the air more than you like. But they threw it 40 times on Friday night. Jimmy was 22 of 40. 260 yards. He had 2 interceptions. So I don't know how many sacks. I doesn't say, but I think their whole thing is finding a running game, to complement their offense. Now they got Warren Central coming in to Snyder at home this week, and Snyder. What a game that was. Snyder had 407 yards against Warren Central, who had 209 total, 282 yards rushing. See, that's what Snyder is. Snyder wants to pound the football, play action pass you. And that's what they did. And that's why Billingsley was pretty good all night. He had 125 yards, but I think he had a rushing touchdown, 2 rushing touchdowns, one of 19 and one of 17 yards.
Yeah.
And Uriah Buchanan, what did we say about him? 170 yards on the ground, 28 carries. Billingsley, the quarterback, 101 on 22 carries. So you can see that dynamic and how that's mixing into what they like to do offensively. And then they go out and hold Warren Central to 150 yards rushing and only 59 yards passing.
Yeah.
And Warren Central's got some players now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and coming in, it's and being a Snyder grad myself and seeing the last 20 years, especially what it's kind of been like for Snyder against, the Warren Centrals of the world and actually playing Warren Central and things like that. It has been a different ball game. And you look at it and go, man, this is pretty steep stuff that Snyder plays against when they get to, that state round. Ben Davis was another one, in the early 2000s where it's really tough, even Penn at semi-state. But I think for them to turn that corner, first win over Warren Central since 1992 for the Snyder Panthers, and just their ability to run the ball, which we knew they were going to do, but have Kieron Billingsley so effective as a new quarterback who replaces Luke Hoppert. He comes in and 125 yards through the air, 101 yards on the ground, and then a couple of touchdowns there. It really just opens that up a little bit. And, ground and pound is traditionally what Snyder does. And then when the defensive side of things, let them, have at it. And of course, that was a key for them too, with 2 interceptions for the Snyder defense. And then of course the big play, I think it's Kolabadi. I'm sorry. I'm unfamiliar with him and his name. We'll learn him as well with the big touchdown on the kickoff return. Those exciting plays that lift an entire sideline. We talked about Kamari Juarez all season long a year ago. Braden Steely, another one at Carroll. When you have those playmakers that can go out and just make big time plays, it just changes the whole trajectory and perception in the mind of a team like that.
Yeah, and if I look statistically, that if I know Coach Tippmann, and I think I know him well, they had 3 turnovers. That's way too many. They had 13 penalties for 80 yards. That's another one that isn't going to, set all too well with him because of what they got coming this week on the docket for them. So I think, let's see.
And they gave up the big punt return off the bat. And so when you see Warren Central run back a punt return, there's that little bit inside of you that goes, oh, here we go again. But, Snyder held in there and was able to surge into the lead and really took off, especially in that third quarter.
Right. Well, they go out and now they take on East Noble this coming Friday night at East Noble. Well, here's East Noble. They beat Bishop Lures 45-7. They beat them pretty handedly at Lures, I believe. And so
it was in Kendallville.
So you got to believe that being a big lift to Amstutz and his Knights, because that was a young group a year ago and they're all a year older, year mature, and they go ahead and, put one on Bishop Lures. Now, East Noble's in a bigger, class than what Lures is. So there's some discrepancy there in terms of their class status versus Lures class status. But that one surprised me. Me from the standpoint I thought it was going to be a little bit closer with it. We talked about Wayne and Addicts. I thought Wayne had a good showing in that that game as well. Beating Addicts. What was that? 35-12. So yeah. And I know they had a pretty good night overall, both running and throwing the ball.
Well, and they get a new, they have a lot of new faces for that Wayne Generals team.
Right.
Marcus Cooper is their new quarterback out at Wayne. And for him, I think it was, let's see, where was his stat line? Here we go. Marcus Cooper, 9 for 17, 163 yards with 3 touchdowns, and 1 to each of their big-time receivers, Jake Sharon, Keyshawn Tolles, and then another one to Harold Mack. So they were firing on all cylinders, and I think they were probably a team that was probably a favorite in those Indy-Fort Wayne matchups. But, I mean, really and then their defense as well.
Right.
Nelson and Bushy were 2 names that really stood out. I don't know if the Nelson kid is related like a brother to Lamarion or not, but those week 1 storylines where those names pop up, the Billingsleys of Snyder and the Nelsons of Wayne and all of that. And I think that's what's pretty cool about it too, is that as time goes on, you start to learn some of these kids and learn their stories and learn, they're part of it. Okay. That's a familiar name in that particular school. So I think, Wayne looked good and they're a force to be reckoned with in the SEC for sure.
This is pretty impressive when you think about it. Now, we also said that Coach Haydock had given total control to his son. So his son's running the show offensively. They had 18 attempt passes. They were 10 of 18 for 192. And they had 19 attempts in rushes for 118. So they were near 50-50 on their distribution Friday night. The only bad thing was they had 5 turnovers. Mm-hmm. Now they got 6, so they end up +1 on the night. But overall, 310 yards total, and I think that's a good performing game for Snyder there.
And Wayne 35-0 or 35-6 at halftime. So we didn't get the running clock, but they had 28 points in that first quarter. So I have a feeling that crowd at Wayne Stadium was a pretty raucous one on Friday night. When you jump out that early, game 1, there again, we've talked about a school like Wayne to see, to have 28 points in the first quarter of your first game at Wayne, I mean, let's be honest, like unheard of. So, I mean, I think it's pretty cool to see. And I know there's a lot of excitement in that school because there, again, lots of great athletes and finding success in different sports as well.
Yeah. And, the other one that we talked a little bit about on Friday night, and I said keep an eye on this one because I thought they're always a pretty darn good team, and that was Northridge. Northridge comes into Northside and beats them 26-13. They have 311 yards, but more importantly, they held Northside to only 166 yards, one of 9 on third downs. So that in itself is a pretty dominant performance. Their quarterback Clark was 14 of 23, had 203 yards. Now, Northside played without Tay, and they played without King.
Yeah.
And so that had a big factor in the ball game for them. But offensively, they really didn't do much offensively. Their 2 touchdowns that they got was Rayshon Carpenter returned a 39-yard fumble, and they had a 75-yard fumble return. And that's ultimately what kept them in the ball game, because other than that, they didn't have anything. And so it was kind of surprised that, that they didn't get the win to a degree, but we had talked about that in pregame, that Northridge is a darn good football team, and you're just not going to show up and beat somebody like a team like Northridge because they're well coached.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of those teams from that South Bend Elkhart area that they play a lot of stiff competition too.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for them, it's an opportunity to play some Fort Wayne schools and to really show what they've got. And I think the long-term success of that Northridge program really showed on Friday night, because they lost quite a bit. But they always, in a school up there, one of the bigger schools in some of those outlying areas that they can draw from, they put together a nice team and really, but it was able to pull away late from the Legends at Chambers Field, by the way, which there again, it was a raucous crowd for that Northside team coming off the successful year they have. And so, but that's like we keep mentioning, the aspect of the non-conference games that you see these matchups you never seen before. You're just looking at everything on paper for the most part in that first week or two. And so to see them collide head to head and see some of the results that we did, I think it's pretty awesome and pretty interesting to from a perspective of watching it, pretty awesome. And then interesting to see some of the results that we did.
Yeah. And, we'll talk a little bit here about Homestead before we kind of preview next week's slate. But Homestead, I thought White, the sophomore quarterback, had a pretty good ball game, honestly. He, his one costly mistake, they run a hitch route there as they were driving, and they had thrown that pass pretty much at will all night. And then the corner, I think it was Carpenter was his name. He read the play and he just stepped in front of the hitch and went 60 yards the other way for the go-ahead decisive touchdown late there. I'm sorry, it was Peterson's his name.
Peterson, yeah, the IU commit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Christian Peterson.
Yeah, he went, 66 yards on him. But, Homestead overall, I thought, with White, young kid, did quite well. 13 of 27 for 133. Fox was his typical self, with, his contributions, both running and passing. I think he probably had, 113 all-purpose yardages last night or Friday night. And, I thought they played a tough Carmel team, pretty tough with Carmel. Now they had a sophomore quarterback as well.
Yeah.
So that really showed for them. And, I had forgot this, but Carmel is truly an independent. They got booted out of their conference for, I guess, winning it too much. And so
them in Center Grove.
Yeah, they're playing this non-conference or independent schedule. So they get to play Christian Brothers, which is nationally top team. And sure. I don't know about that one, but overall, I think, I think there's a good and I think there's correctable mistakes for Homestead. Now they come up and they play Noblesville next. That won't be an easy one either. So you can't say that Coach Zolman did not just go out and pick up 2 automatic wins.
No, absolutely. And I think it's a testament, to see, yes, Homestead loses that game and Carmel, gets the win in week 1. But the defense for Homestead, just holding Carmel to 144 yards of total offense. It was a 14-7 game. Really, you think about it, the 2 touchdowns for Carmel, that Ozzie Pollard short yardage run in that second quarter when they got down there, and then the 66-yard interception return even before that early on in the game. So really they played a clean game throughout, and they relied heavily on Fox. Michael White, I think, made a kind of a name for himself as quarterback, taking over for Peyton Slavin. And Jim Shovelin, our colleague from 1380 in the pregame show, where and I were in the media room, and it so happened that I think the pep band director or somebody with the music staff at Homestead was in there talking about how great of a basketball player Michael White was too. So 6'3", I believe, probably just under 200 pounds. So a kid that is going to be a name to be known here in Fort Wayne and Fort Wayne football, probably basketball as well going forward. A JV kid a year ago. So I think it's pretty cool. I think they found a good quarterback, and I think there again to have Brett Fox, that senior leadership in the backfield, who can go out and pound the ball in the run game, but then also break out on that play action, and you can get Mike White on the run and, big things happen. And that's where that big play happened for Homestead, where they were able to catch in with their lone touchdown later on that the referee got in my shot. So I didn't quite get the lone touchdown of the night.
I think there's probably a little,
yeah,
I think there might be a little bit of, there might have been a pass interference there with the last throw into the end zone, but it's hard to call those type of penalties when two kids are going for the ball and such. But, Persley had a good game. He really played well. I thought Wyatt Little played well coming out of the safety position. So I think they've got some things to build upon, most definitely. Some things to clean up. That's no question about that. And, they'll learn, because that ball game should have been out of hand. It should have been a 21-7 ball game, well in hand heading into that final quarter. And it's a different ball game if those things were, different. But unfortunately, they didn't make the plays, and Carmel did there when they needed to.
Yeah. So a great night, though. We were out there for the 1380 game of the week, week number 1 of this kind of 2 week for SAC, not having, and if we look ahead to this week's games here and talking a little bit about them, another full slate of non-conference games for the SAC teams. Dwenger, another tough one that we can just go down the list a little bit here, Coach. Dwenger and Cincinnati Moeller. I mean, another national powerhouse in Cincinnati Moeller. I think the Dwenger Saints kind of have their work cut out again for them.
Well, and Moeller got beat by Ben Davis. Ben Davis went on the road to Cincinnati Moeller and really kind of put one on them. I don't think they had much luck, but they are going to be a little mad come next Friday night when that one kicks off, because they took one on the chops from Ben Davis.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Dwenger coming off of that loss to Brownsburg that were really just struggled to get any offensive going. So it'll be interesting to see the kind of the turnaround for the Dwenger Saints as well, to see what they pull from that. But that's the schedules that you make, and that's where Dwenger is headed next week. Of course, another one that's really interesting is Lures and New Haven. I think it probably, because of Lures, with their showing at East Noble losing 45-7, New Haven beating Northrop 42-6. I think this makes it a different match, a different type of interesting matchup, because I'm not really sure what to make of Lures so far. And then New Haven comes out, against Northrop, granted that, but with a Johnny Washington, with Mylan Graham, and Trey Bates is running back, 3 touchdowns for him a week ago. They've got a lot of weapons. And so I think this is another new game that, that we haven't seen before, that should be an interesting one on Friday.
Well, I think that New Haven definitely has the ability to be a contender in the NE8 if they play football that they're capable of playing. Their problem has been their consistency over the last few years, and that's why they've had 5-5 records for a better part of the last 3 years. But I thought they played well against Northrop. I saw a little bit of that game as it pertained to them. Lures, like I said, I was surprised at the East Noble score. So that comes down to, again, do they have a quarterback? And I just don't know what they, where they're at with that. And again, once Kyle figures out what identity they will be, he'll get it to the way he wants it, where they're, for a formidable opponent, and he may find it this week against New Haven.
Yeah, and we talked about it on the PSM High School Football Tailgate pregame show. How do you split up the reps between Mylan Graham and a Johnny Washington, and with Trey Bates in the backfield as well as a running back? 9 for 11 was quarterback Donovan Williams, and he threw 4 catches for Mylan Graham, 3 catches for Johnny Washington, and then 2 catches for James Hardy IV. So, splitting up those yardage and those that way. They didn't find the end zone in the passing game, but those big plays set up a big night for Trey Bates as the New Haven Bulldogs rolled against Northrop. Moving down, our 1380 The Fan Game of the Week next Friday will be out at Carroll High School for their matchup with Indianapolis Warren Central. They come to town. They're, again, a different mindset looking at this game because, honestly, I figured Warren Central would have beaten Snyder and come in there, and then, it's looking at, okay, Carroll now coming off the loss to Hamilton Southeastern. Is this an 0-2 Carroll? Tough start for them. But I think Carroll and Warren Central suddenly becomes winnable games for both teams because I'm not so sure Warren Central is so good as we thought they were. And I think Carroll, it's just that tough schedule off the bat that they have to play through.
Well, yeah, you don't know if there was anybody that was bumped and bruised and maybe out this week. Warren Central, I know their coach that's been there for 3 years, Mike Kirshner. He's a really good coach. He's done tremendous things, not only there, but Ben Davis and Mount Vernon. And now he's trying to revamp a Warren Central program that's been kind of down on their luck the last few years. With that loss, he's 11-11 in 3 years, I believe, or something to that effect. But Carroll's going to have to be aware of their quarterback, Jackson, who can run it and throw it. And then they're going to have to, like I said, they're going to have to figure out a way to find a run game, however that is, stacks up. I don't know if they have a Uriah Buchanan back there because he's a bigger kid. And then, of course, Billingsley with his ability, they're a little bit different offensively in that regard. So it'll be a good matchup. I'd give the edge right now probably to Carroll, based upon what I've seen between the two schools. I think Carroll's a little bit better of a football team right now. So I think Carroll has a chance to get themselves back to 1-1 before we head into the conference play. But that's the nice thing about the non-conference. It doesn't mean anything when you look at it because the way it's not like they're paying for points to go, strength of schedule and things like that. But these are all good games for them to play because ultimately they may play one of these teams down the road when it comes to the tourney time.
Yep. We're looking forward to being out there for that game as our 1380 The Fan Game of the Week. Kickoff for 7:30 because Warren Central coming up from Indy. Pre-game show starts at 6. Coach with Jim Shovelin and myself on that. Looking at some of the other games in the SAC non-conference slate this weekend, Concordia and Eastbrook. Concordia showed some flashes, Coach, of brilliance. A lot more passing offense through the air again. Came up short to Indianapolis Cecina. Now they play a very good Eastbrook team that has a long storied tradition in their class.
Well, absolutely. And Eastbrook I think runs more of the triple option concept, or they at least did. So that also creates problems for a team like Concordia where they only have a few days to practice it.
Yeah, Concordia's new quarterback, Braden Corbett, 23 for 35 with 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Avery Cook, the wide receiver, 127 yards and 2 touchdowns. So it looks like they found their new 1-2 punch, at least on the offensive side of things for the Concordia Cadets. Moving down the list, Homestead, we mentioned, travels to Noblesville, another big Indy versus Fort Wayne area clash. Making the bus trip to Noblesville, never easy, Coach.
No, it will, again, like I said during the pregame show, and I thought it was true for Carmel, was you get the bus legs on you. So it took Carmel a little bit to kind of get their legs underneath them after making that travel with 2 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's different. it's just a different, because these kids are not used to making these type of trips until, the tournament time. So it's a different ball game with that, and travel time and school and all that. And I'm not sure Noblesville played.
Yeah,
Or
they actually did. They played they played on Saturday, or not Saturday because that was the Colts game. Friday night in the Horseshoe Classic at Lucas Oil Stadium, they played Mount Vernon of Fortville, and they win 48-30. A key part of that, a name for pretty much everybody to watch, Logan Schaffner, the running back from Noblesville, 14 carries for 240 yards. And 2 touchdowns, and they got it done through the air too. So they have a heavy run game. And let's face it, looking at this, 405 yards of rushing offense for Noblesville, and 240 of them were for one guy. So it's not like it was just give him the ball and that's it. I mean, there were other guys that were inserting themselves into that game. And I think, and it wasn't like they crushed Mount Vernon 67-0, and it was running clock and you're getting JV guys in there. It was only a 18-point win at the end. So very interesting to watch and see. So the run game, I think, is where you start if you're Homestead, and focusing in on that run defense, which we know Homestead has a formidable one. We did see that against Carmel, but it's going to be an interesting task, a heavy task to take down the Schnoffer kid, Logan Schnoffer, a senior out of Noblesville. Moving on down the list here, we'll have Northside going on the road to Indy as well, taking on Lawrence North. So, licking their wounds a little bit there, the Northside Legends, and trying to get back on the right track, Coach. This is one of those key things for, especially early on, it's non-conference, so it doesn't count in the SAC, obviously, but, not letting one win become two, even if you lose this game per se. And I don't know a whole heck of a lot about Lawrence North, but for Northside, making sure what happened Friday is in the rearview window, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, and this is going to be the challenge. You raised the bar, you went 8-3, and now everybody's expecting you to match that or eclipse that. And you lose a game that in some respects you probably could have won or should have won against the Northridge team, but they come up short. And I would imagine, they got punched in the nose and really wasn't expecting it. So now they got to go play on the road against a very strong Lawrence North team. And that's not going to be an easy task.
Nope. Lawrence North with the 24-17 win over Avon last week. Freshman running back Isavion Moore, 142 yards in his debut game. So another formidable running back, young, coming for them. Moving our way down the list, Northrop at Wayne. Now, this is the interesting one. When the schedule came out, it shows, they don't. So as it turns out, Wayne and Northrop could not find a non-conference opponents for week 2. So they agreed to play each other. This is all from what Wayne Athletic Director Gary Raber told me. It will not count in the SAC standings, though it will count overall. So I think Wayne showed on Friday night, Coach, that they came out of the gate blazing, guns a-blazing, that fun and gun that Sherwood Haydock runs, and now his son is the head offensive coordinator. And I think they welcome in Northrop, who continues to struggle, continues to try to find a footing. But this is a game that, has some SAC overtones, though it doesn't count in the conference.
Right. And, I think it's important for Wayne to make sure that they reestablish themselves again against the Northrop team. This will be a close fought ball game, because I'm sure Northrop will get a little better than their output against New Haven. And I look for Northrop to have a better showing against a Wayne team that right now is feeling pretty good at 1-0.
Yeah, another good one. This could be a barn burner up in Kindleville. Snyder goes on the road to face East Noble, both teams with massive victories last Friday night. Snyder over Warren Central, East Noble upending big-time Lures. Coach, this should be a fun one with the ground game. Snyder with their ground game, especially, quarterback, the dual threat there now, but also East Noble, 309 yards of offense against Lures. Tyson Reinbold eating up 190 yards of those. Xander Brazel is their quarterback. This should be a fun one that we don't get to see, but now we do.
It's pretty, when you look at the quarterback and the running back situation there, it's pretty equally matched in terms of what each gives their team. I think the difference is going to come down, does the offensive line for Snyder dominate East Noble NAA team in the trenches? And that's where this game ultimately will be decided. Because if East Noble can't run the ball, they just can't drop back and throw it every play, because that's not a Xander. That's not his forte per se. So this one's going to be a tough one for East Noble, but with with them putting what they together against Bishop Lures, I'm sure it's gotten Coach Tippmann's attention, and I'm sure he'll have his Panthers ready to roll come Friday night up in Kendallville.
Yeah, and just as this non-conference schedule has benefited the SAC teams, we're also seeing that with East Noble playing 2 SAC schools at home back-to-back. And the last one on the SAC non-conference slate, we talked about it with Coach Goodwell a bit, Southside versus South Bend St. Joseph, their first home game of the year. South Bend St. Joseph comes to Fort Wayne in Coach Goodwell's first game as coach at Weicker Stadium. And, tough loss Friday night for the Archers, trying to bounce back, trying to continue to grow that program, the baby steps. And now they welcome a very good South Bend St. Joe's team.
Absolutely. And this will be another challenge for them. And like I said, when we were talking to Coach Goodwell, it's going to be a week-to-week thing, a game-to-game thing, and laying that foundation and get that firmly in place. And, they'll have a chance against the South Bend St. Joe team that comes in with a very, very big tradition.
Yeah. And and obviously historically they're big, but South Bend St. Joseph coming off the 33-28 loss against Lakeland on Friday night. So that probably perks some interests for the Southside Archers as well, going back and looking at that. Lakeland, a team on the upswing, and a big win for them out of the NECC, but certainly.
Well, Lakeland's got that quarterback up there that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I can't think of his name off the
Holbrook.
top. Was it Holbrook?
Yeah, Braden Holbrook.
Yes,
I believe his name. Braden Holbrook. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's a legit player for them. And there's a team up there that's kind of struggled over the last few years, but now this quarterback that they have may change everything for them. So keep an eye on Lakeland this year, because I think they're going to have a really good year
in the NECC Big Division. There you go.
Absolutely. All right.
And that will wrap it up for the schedule of games this week. Again, we will be at Carroll for the big game with Warren Central, 7:30 kickoff. We will be on the air with the Parkview Sports Medicine High School football tailgate pregame show at 6, running till just before kickoff, around 7:20 or so, and then kickoff at 7:30. And of course, the post game probably from the Pine Valley Pizza Hut, if I had to guess my geography on that one, Coach. But another exciting Friday night coming up, Coach, and looking forward to week 2, especially now that we got a little bit of sampling on what some of these teams look like this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Another good week in the books, and now we get to week 2. And just remind everybody out there, if you're looking for potentially helping sponsors some of our segments, give us a DM. We'll give you an idea of what that would all be. It's not going to be something that's going to be overly expensive, that's for sure, but would love the help in that regard, as well as liking and follow and all that good stuff. Yeah. So, and if you're watching us on YouTube, we do have some affiliate links there. So if you want something from that perspective, I got a list of things there. We had the list for the IHSA for the people that would like to go into officiating. So don't forget that. That's on that first video, and I'll keep continuing putting that link there for the people out there listening and watching to us.
Yeah,
right now.
Absolutely. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, or X now, I guess it is. We have a new Instagram account, which I know is big for the kids, and
TikTok.
TikTok. We did start the TikTok page, so we'll have to delve into that a little bit. And of course, YouTube and our website now, upon further review, sac.com. You can find all of our podcasts from this season and last there, and great way to just stay connected with us. And we got stuff that's always coming out, Coach. We put some of our interviews out and from our shows, and any little tidbits we hear during the week, and of course, some video and photos from Friday night games as well, wherever we are with 1380. And so, thanks for joining us tonight on Upon Further Review. For Shannon Griffith, I'm Eric Dudkevich, better known as Dude. We'll see you Friday night from Carroll, and we'll talk to you next week on Upon Further Review.